here in about 2 or 3 seconds. All right.
Okay, sounds good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Harbor Times Strategy Talks. It's February 22nd, 2001. In Dallas, Texas, we've had a completely crazy week, as did a huge part of the country. I know you saw the snowstorms, and we're not exactly built for that here. I did read the other day where somebody said 2020 was the year of hell, and in 2021, hell froze over. And that's actually what we felt like last week. So I know many people are still struggling, and I know there are a lot of issues with the water and the electric bills, variable rate plan. So hopefully we get all that figured out. I read where people were having $15,000, $17,000 electricity bills. So the governor did suspend the energy companies from billing this morning. So we'll see. Hopefully that all gets worked out. It's really hard to fathom at this point. A couple of things that I wanted to point out. Did you see? Did anyone see the video of the plane where the engine exploded this weekend? That was amazing, and it was crazy that so many people got footage of it. Luckily, the passenger got the plane landed safely, and as I understand it, 10 crew members and 231 passengers all made it safely. And there's two more awesome things that I want to talk about. One of them is, if you haven't checked out the pictures and the video from Mars, you need to look that up. We landed on Mars last week, and there's a lot of video and pictures coming in, and it is truly amazing to see. And the other piece of awesome news is that Taco Bell is going to enter the chicken sandwich wars with their new chicken sandwich taco. Doesn't that sound delicious? My youngest daughter just started eating Taco Bell a couple weeks ago. She's a taco only person, but maybe I'll try this out someday if we get there. This last week taught us in the country, as did last year, a lot about preparedness. I used to be a Cub Scout. I made it all the way to Weeblos, and I dropped out after that. But I wish I wouldn't have, but I did. I was interested in other things at the time. I have family members who are Eagle Scouts. I have family members who went on. But one of the fundamental premises of the Boy Scouts is teaching, be prepared. Be prepared. And that's a valuable lesson in life. And like I said, the utility companies here in Texas are learning about that right now. We all learned about it in 2020 from a business and personal standpoint. And most of us have just really realized that it's important to be prepared. So be prepared for a global pandemic. Be prepared for social unrest when it may come. Be prepared for a winter storm in Dallas, Texas, or in other southern parts of the country when it may come. Just be prepared. And we're going to talk about that today a little bit with our guest. And so let me go ahead and mention, I've heard our guest today present at several industry conferences, and I consider him to be a true thought leader. I'm told that at one point he wanted to be a scientist, but he decided to take a different route in college and go the computer scientist route. And I'm glad that he did. And I think we're all glad that he did, because we're going to focus on some key strategy points today. So David Obert is the vice president of property technology solutions at Xactware. As I mentioned, he's also a frequent conference speaker, and I've really enjoyed hearing him present at a couple of conferences. So, hey, David, how's it going? Thanks for joining us today.
Doing great, Colin. How are you doing?
I'm great. Like I said, it's sunny here. I know it's sunny where you are in Utah, so that's good news, I think, right now. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is David Obert, and what is Xactware, and what do you do for them?
Yeah, great. Happy to. I've actually been with Xactware 15, almost 16 years. As crazy as that is, I was a young buck when I started with Xactware many years ago. I came fresh off of owning my own business, and it was in the retail space, so a little bit different than maybe what I do today. But it taught me some really good fundamental things about business, just generally. And as I was going through my education, like like you mentioned, Colin, I was all about biology, man. I thought I was going to be a doctor someday. I love biology. My dad is he has his undergrad and master's degree in biology, and so I thought, that's going to be the track I go. And I realized once you start getting into cadavers and things like that, it starts getting pretty gross pretty quick,
Yeah, I
And
would
so
imagine
did
so.
a little
Yeah.
bit of a beeline, and so made the move over into technology, and that's where I've lived. And so started with Xactware about 16 years ago, and we at Xactware, it's an interesting company because we are contractors at heart. Many of your watchers, I'm sure, are contractors living in the default space, and that's kind of our premise and where we all came from. Our founder was a contractor back in the 80s, and he was looking for a better way to do bids for all of his different construction jobs, and decided there's got to be a better way to do this than writing it down on pad and paper, and asked a buddy of his that lived down the street that happened to be a programmer. Again, in the 80s, that's pretty far and few between. But asked him, hey, I'm interested in creating a software program to do that. And fast forward to today, and we're here. Xactware, been around since 1986, and we've had some great success. And where we've primarily focused in the past has been on the insurance vertical. We do a lot of estimating software for the insurance side of our business, where we work with insurance carriers, IA firms, and contractors to make people that have issues with their homes whole. So in the case of Dallas, with all the freezing that went on, and I saw all these bursted pipes and all that type of stuff, our software is traditionally used to estimate the cost of those different things, and that's what Xactware does. But in the recent past, we've actually spun out a part of our business to focus on non-insurance verticals, like the mortgage default space, like the real estate space, remodeling and construction, and that's where I live. That's the team that I lead up is that focus team on those other market segments, and that's where I'm at. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And I know a lot of people in the default servicing industry are using your software, as well as in the insurance and some other verticals. So let's start with preparedness, what I mentioned in the opening monologue. I've heard you speak about preparedness, and it really hit home when you did that. I actually just heard you a couple weeks ago at your company's convention that you put on. Why is business preparedness so important, especially in 2021?
Yeah, great question, Colin, and I think I would refer to 2020 as why it's so important. I think
Yeah,
more than anything else, right? It's 2020. Who could have predicted that in 2020 we would see a once per generation type of pandemic just absolutely throw our businesses out of whack? I mean, who could have predicted that? I'll tell you what. As I've watched the stock market, and as I've watched some different things generally, I would love to go back in time and tell myself, hey, invest during that time, because it would be
sure.
really good. But the reality is nobody could have predicted that was going to happen. And I mean, Colin, you mentioned that Boy Scouts and all that stuff. I'm an Eagle Scout. That's something that has always just kind of been ingrained into my psyche from a young age. Be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. And I can't say that I was ready for that type of environment to hit our business, but I can say that we were ready for it when it happened. And you'd be surprised how ready we really were. We were able to get people up and running, working from home in very short order. People were productive. Where some businesses were full blown shut down and didn't know what to do, we were ready for it. We had all of these different things engaged and ready for us. And so, I mean, it just takes a real simple look at 2020 to be able to determine that, hey, look, not being prepared is kind of a thing of the past. The other thing that I would mention on that topic specifically is, and you mentioned, I mentioned that I love biology. I will talk a little bit about some biological concepts that I think are important with preparedness, because what better environment to mimic than nature? Nature is the peak of preparedness in every single way, shape, and form. Nature
And one of
somehow
those
adapts to.
concepts is one of those concepts is heterogeneity. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or okay.
heterogeneity. Yep,
All
yep,
right. Well,
that's
I was
exactly right.
close, but I remember you mentioning that a couple of weeks ago. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, no, no. You're absolutely right. And to talk to that point, Colin, heterogeneity is this concept of, well, and I use this example of a cactus during the daytime, how it closes its flowers to protect those flowers. Now, the cactus isn't an immortal danger in and of itself, right? The cactus is just fine during the day. It's built for that. But those flowers it protects so that when the time is right, it can open those flowers back up in the evening so it can be pollinated by bats and things like that. um, our businesses very similarly should be prepared. We should look at diversification. We should look at ways to enhance our businesses so that we can be ready with for these harsh times with alternatives. And so, just like that flower is closed from that cactus, we slow down one side of our business and pick up on the other side, and vice versa, so that we can maintain some semblance of continuity with our businesses.
Okay. Well, good. That's awesome. So you work for a technology company, and we've established. You mentioned that you're in several verticals: insurance, property preservation, which is in default mortgage servicing, and other verticals. So, company that's facing several different verticals has several different options. How do you focus your time, either from a business perspective or your time individually, on a specific vertical? That is to say, how do you decide what project to focus on at any given time?
It's a great question, and there's a couple ways that we do that, and a lot of them are process driven. It seems really easy to say, hey, look, things are slow over here, so I'm just going to focus all in over here, right? That seems the obvious way to go, but it's a little bit more thought out than that. Oftentimes, we'll look at different opportunities and in these different verticals and try and determine, number one, where is the lowest hanging fruit for sure. But number two, where can we make the most impact? And number three, how can we potentially get ready for an influx of potential business in that specific market? So it's not just as simple as we want to make money. It's more than that. How can we improve our customers their livelihood? How can we ultimately help them make more money in the long run? And so we do this massive review to try and determine. In fact, we create business cases. We look at the market. We look at market intelligence. All of these analytics that we pull together to try and better understand our position and how and when to focus. For instance, right now we look at the mortgage default space, and things are really slow in the mortgage default side, as an example.
To say the
People are
least,
struggling.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. People are really struggling right now, for sure. And I'm sure you've seen some of your clients say some of the same things, Colin. I'm sure of that
Sure.
because I've heard it. And so we look at the default space specifically, and we say, is now the time to focus on default? And I would argue yes, because ultimately, here's the thing: however big the wave that everybody keeps on talking about is, it's not relevant how big it is. It's that it's coming, and that's probably what is more relevant at this point. People, we have a period of extreme low defaults due to the moratorium, due to forbearances, all that type of stuff is all happening right now. So volume is crazy low. However, now is the time to prepare because we see this out there, right? It's like seeing a tsunami coming, and maybe it's not a tsunami or a tidal wave or anything like that, but the either way you look at it, we're going to see an inflow of tide of foreclosure. It's just what's going to happen.
Sure.
And so
It's
we
unfortunate
have
what's going to happen in
time.
the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have some time right now to prepare so that when that does come, we can be ready for it. And so even in our business, we're trying to prepare. We're trying to improve our products so that when that influx does happen, those companies that are waiting for it are ready for it. They have processes. They have functionality within our products to assist with that influx. Because there are definitely companies that have gone out of business during this rough time, and for the companies that remain, they're going to be taking on the brunt of this. And so, where it may be, let's say it's conservatively double what we saw in 2019 at 1% of total default foreclosures going through the system. If there's fewer servicing companies, you're still going to get hit. that's the reality. You're still going to get hit. It may be more than double, it may be triple or quadruple for your company. Now's the time to get ready for that. And that's where that whole concept of preparedness comes in.
Right. And that's what we talked about, preparedness, or we talked about the volumes. Even if the volumes don't, if there's not a tidal wave, there's not a tsunami, and from a default mortgage servicing standpoint, and it's not 2010 and 2009, it's going to be more than 2020 and 2021. That's for sure. So if you're not prepared, you're going to miss out on opportunity, which is another. So we talked about preparedness. Let's talk about another key business issue is diversification. So diversification is key for most businesses. In fact, I think all businesses should be diversified at least to some extent. So do you think diversification is more important as a strategy in 2021, let's say, than the past? Why or why not? Is it more important now, I guess, is the question.
I would say that diversification is always important. I think is it more important now than in the past? I would say no, just because it should have always been important. I think when it rains it pours, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an umbrella too. And I think that even with that flow of foreclosures hitting the system, you should still be looking at how to diversify your business, because inevitably there's ebbs and flows all the time in the default space, just like there is in the real estate space. It's a converse effect, and I think it's important that you do diversify your business when the times are good, because if you're trying to diversify after that ebb has happened, it's already too late.
Too late. You missed the boat. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah, you've missed the boat, unfortunately, already.
So let's talk about you. I mean, we can talk about it from an Xactware standpoint, or David Obert, or a combination of both. What is the biggest challenge you have had with your specific business role in the last few months, and how are you overcoming it? You can't say COVID. I guess there could be things related to the coronavirus, but let's just talk about another type of, what is a challenge, the big challenge you've faced, and how are you overcoming it, or how have you overcome it?
I would say it's funny, Colin, you ask that. COVID is obviously the easiest to pick on, right? Because everybody dealt with that. Everybody's seen that problem. But I would say the biggest challenge, I think, and it's an ongoing challenge, I think, generally, is pivoting your strategy, I would say, more than anything else. And sure, COVID is there for that. But again, like I said about diversification and diversifying your business, I think it's often too late if something catastrophic has already happened. From our perspective, that's been a real focal point for us is pivoting our strategies to support customer needs, to support our clients' needs, and not our needs, if that makes sense.
Sure.
We may think that X is the right thing to do, but our client may tell us, no, that's not right. You're wrong. You're missing the boat. You need to do Y. It's really hard to get into that mindset of, maybe they're right. And pivoting that strategy around kind of that type of commentary, that type of statement, because oftentimes we get into ruts and we get into this rut mindset of this is where I need to be and this is how things need to be done. And the reality isn't quite that sometimes. Sometimes you're right. But I think that's been, and that's something that we always deal with, especially in the software technology and data analytics world. It's constantly rethinking through our strategies, rethinking through our products, and how to better align with our customers' needs.
Sure. No, that's great. That's something, when I've talked about pivoting with a lot of my guests recently, and pivoting is a continuing thought in my mind. So that was good to hear. How do you, David Obert, how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things? What do you do to stimulate the mind, so to speak?
It's a good question. So I like to read a lot of articles. I subscribe to a lot of different news feeds and things like that. That's how I keep my mind going and try and keep up with a lot of different things. I try and talk to thought leaders in different industries as well. It's funny as we talk to our clients and stuff, we end up getting pulled into conversations with consultants or thought leaders or different things like that. And it's really interesting to engage with those people because what I very quickly realize when I'm having conversations with many of them is how lacking I really am from from an intelligence standpoint.
Yeah,
I talk to
sure.
some of these people are brilliant masters of their respective industries or um, they're subject matter experts that are just so far beyond anything that I could ever do, and it really expands and opens my mind to how little I really do know, and again, it makes me a little bit more flexible in my learning too, seeing different perspectives, hearing different perspectives. Again, you often get in a rut, and I think you get that way with yourself too, and as you have conversations with others, but I try and subscribe to articles and stuff. I get into podcasts, listen to podcasts just to hear alternative opinions and views, and I think it's really important for a well-rounded psyche, frankly.
Sure. Yeah. No. One of my previous guests was an expert on leadership, and he was talking about how COVID has exposed people who don't develop themselves, right? So whether it's reading articles, whether it's listening to podcasts, that once that hit and there was a crisis, all of a sudden, people who weren't ready, even going back to the concept of prepared, but he was talking about it more from a leadership development, they were exposed. And a lot of them weren't going to make it from a business standpoint. So along those same lines, then, as far as reading and all that, what business issue are you researching the most right now? What are you spending most of your time looking at?
It's funny. I spend a lot of time, honestly, Colin, watching the real estate space. That has been it's been really intriguing, given inventory and looking at just how our economics are affecting the real estate space specifically. It's not a day goes by that I don't read a half dozen different views or discussions around how our economy and the real estate space are interlinked and where we're going in the future. It's really interesting to me because in a lot of respects, and just in talking with economists and of different businesses and hearing some perspective, we're in some cases we're in uncharted territory. This is different. This is a new world for many of us, and with interest rates where they're at, with inventory where it's at, with home building where it's at, and all of these different things, it's like this interesting perfect storm that's going on that a lot of people are guessing what's going to happen, but nobody really knows. We don't have history to link to and say, well, this is what happened in the 80s, or this is what happened in the 60s, or Great Depression, or whatever era. We're trying to look back in time to figure out, because history repeats itself, right? Try to look back in time and suggest here's what's going to happen, but a lot of people are out of their depth right now because this is it's an interesting world in real estate specifically, and so I've really honed in on that, and it's been really interesting for me to take part and get to take part with some of my colleagues just in discussions and just thinking through what do you guys think and asking questions and different things like that, because it is very unique and different, no question.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. I don't know if are you familiar with Clubhouse, the new social
I
media
am.
craze?
Yeah,
Okay. Are you on Clubhouse?
I am. Yeah, I am.
Okay. Okay. I need to look you up and follow you then or whatever, connect on that. That's a great place to have some of those discussions. I think that's going to be a really good forum for that. So
Totally
what is
agree.
the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they need to?
Yeah, my email's always open. Everybody can. I mean, feel free to email me. And one thing that just real quick, Colin, that I would mention. I think you know, because we live in a lot of different spaces. Xactware lives in a lot of different spaces. Just back on the diversification perspective, I would encourage your listeners and your watchers, if there's any interest in looking for alternative businesses or things like that. Like I mentioned, we're in a lot of different spaces. I'm happy to make connections and contacts if that's helpful. I'm more than open to that. But so I want to offer myself up as a little bit of a resource for some of your listeners and watchers. Because I think it's given especially on the default side where we're at, some people are really lean right now and they're looking for some diversification options. And we spoke at Elevate about some of those different opportunities, Colin, and I'm happy to make some connections for some of those people. But if you want to reach out and get a hold of me, you are more than welcome to. You can email me at dcobert@verisk.com.
Okay,
And that's
and
probably,
we'll put that up on the video too. Yeah,
yeah, great.
yeah, and we'll put that up on video as well so that people can get that. So, well, that's great, David. I appreciate you sharing some of these thoughts. Appreciate you being with us today. To our listeners and viewers, I think some of the key takeaways here today are: be prepared. We always need to be prepared. We're talking about from a business standpoint. So whether you're an individual, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, you've got a small business, you're managing a large business unit, you need to be prepared. Diversification. How can you diversify your business to go with the ebbs and flows of different markets? Develop yourself. How can you learn? How can you network? How can you grow? These are all things we need to be doing from a business standpoint and from an individual standpoint. So I appreciate all the feedback that you give us. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. I appreciate all the comments. They're always helpful. And please tell a friend about the podcast. Make sure you refer people. We love picking up listeners. And thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.